DJ Lagway has been hyped up to be the Messiah of Florida this year. And as good as what he was last season and as good as what he will be this year coming up, Florida has more than just DJ Lagway that makes them a team that nobody in the SEC should want to play this year. They're going to have a really good rushing attack with Jadon Baugh, who was a SEC all-freshman selection last year. He led this team in rushing with 673 yards. He also was averaging over 5 yards per carry. And Florida was 3-0 when him and DJ Lagway were in the backfield as starters. They also have a loaded room of wide receivers. They have one of the deepest wide receiver rooms in the SEC entering this season. You got Eugene Wilson, who was a freshman All-American a few years ago. He missed majority of 2024 due to injuries. He's going to shape back in a major way, and he's easily going to become one of the better receivers in this conference. And then Aiden Mizell, former 5-star coming out of high school. He's a huge breakout candidate for the Gators this year. He had 2 touchdowns that went for over 40 yards last season. He was one of 7 receivers in the SEC to do so. You got Michael Sturdivant, a transfer from UCLA, who was incredibly utilized during his time with the Bruins. He had 2 100-yard receiving games last year. He was averaging 14 yards per reception, and that's with the quarterback play being all over the place last season. But what makes Florida so formidable on offense outside of DJ Lagway, how good their ground game is going to be, and how deep the receiving core is that they have one of the 5 best offensive lines in college football coming into this season. They returned 4 starters on the O-line for this year. They gave up the 3rd least amount of sacks in the SEC last year. And you have Jake Slaughter, who's going to be commanding that offensive line at center. He was a first-team All-American last year. And they got a bunch of guys on this offensive line that should be high draft picks in the first couple of rounds of the 2026 draft. And if you thought that Florida's offense wasn't scary enough, the Gators' defensive line this year could be the best in the SEC this season. You return 3 of your leading sack producers from 2024. You got defensive tackle Caleb Banks, who reminds me a lot of Chris Jones, Jalen Carter. He's a really disruptive pass rusher. And if he improves his run-stopping ability, he's going to be the best defensive tackle in the nation this year. Then you got defensive end Tyreek Sapp. That last name sound familiar to you? It should, because he is the nephew of Hall of Fame defensive lineman Warren Sapp, and he led the Gators in sacks last year with 7. He's coming back. Then you got George Gums, who had 5 sacks last year, second on the team. Florida's going to have a really scary defensive line this year. Their defensive line could be much better than what Georgia's will be this year, just because they return more proven production at this position than what the Dogs do. And Cormani McClain is due for a breakout season this year with Florida. He's been the talk of Florida's offseason. All they were talking about in spring was how he put on a bunch of muscle. He was clocking in at 23 miles per hour. The guy was the former #1 overall corner in his recruiting class. The potential is there. The athleticism, the traits is all there for him to become one of the best cornerbacks, not just in the SEC, but in all of college football this year. And not just does Florida have Cormani McClain, who could break out, but this entire secondary could break out. They returned all their starters from last year, and their secondary improved tremendously throughout the beginning of last season to the end of last season. So Florida is more than just DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway is going to be part of the engine that makes Florida a great team this year, but they have other parts around them that should be just as good as what DJ Lagway is going to be. This is one of the better teams that Florida has put on the field in a few years now. And it's taken Billy Napier a while to get the ball rolling down there in Gainesville, but a huge reason why they gave him a 4th season to prove himself is because 70% of Florida's NIL money is tied into a lot of these young guys who are going to step up and break out for Florida this year. So DJ Lagway isn't the only thing that makes Florida horrifying going into this season. Dominant rushing attack. You got a loaded receiver room. You're going to have one of the best offensive lines in college football, along with a defensive line that will be just as good, with 3 potential first 3-round draft picks, and you're going to have an experienced secondary. Look out for Florida. This team isn't getting hyped up just because they have DJ Lagway, the new Messiah. This is a really good team.